Audio check, audio check. I know there's a few people that are on early. I appreciate you showing up. If you could type in the chat box, let me know if you can hear me okay. I'd appreciate it. Thanks. We'll start in just a few minutes. Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon if you're on the West Coast. I'm your host, Jeff Hyman, and we're going to get started in just a few minutes. I just wanted to do one last audio check, video check. If you could just type in the chat box if you can hear me okay, see me okay, and then we'll get started in just a few. Good evening or good afternoon. I'm Jeff, and it's great to have you on. We are going to get started in about 7 minutes. I'm going to start on time and give people a chance to join. So if you haven't already got your beverage, I hope you'll join me. And if you could type in the chat box, if you can hear me okay, if you can see me okay, just want to do one last check, and then we will get started in just a few. Good evening or good afternoon. If you're on the West Coast, I'm Jeff, and we are going to start in just 2 minutes. Just letting everyone kind of get into the room. We had hundreds and hundreds of signups, which is amazing. So we'll get started in about 2 minutes. It's not too late to grab something to drink, I sure have. And we'll see you in just a few. Good evening or good afternoon if you're on the West Coast. I am your host, Jeff Hyman, and it is great to do another one of these live events. We've got hundreds of people still kind of getting into the room right now, but I'm super excited about it. And, we're going to go as long as you want. We'll go half hour, couple hours, go all night, whatever you want. But there's only one requirement. I said it in the invite, and I was deadly serious. Unusual circumstances like these call for whatever it takes to get through. So I scheduled this for 5 o'clock for a reason. And it is a live session, just in case, you think it might be one of those taped webinars. I can prove to you it's a live session. This is how I can prove it. Today's stock market up 1,300 points. We've gone up 20% in the past 3 days, which is pretty crazy. Why don't you type in the chat box if you can hear me, see me, and actually, why don't you tell me where you're from? Just type the city that you're in or the town that you're in. I'd love to know, and I will share some of that. And then we're going to get started, and we're really just going to dive right into Q&A, whatever you want to cover. You can ask questions about finding your next role. You can ask questions about how headhunting really works. You might want to know how to hire people. Because there's a lot of companies, believe it or not, that are still hiring. So we can take it wherever you want to take it. And it's great to have you on this evening or this afternoon. Dallas and Charlotte, Atlanta, California, Decatur, Georgia, Philadelphia, Minneapolis, Arizona, California, LA. It's a lot of people still getting on. Great. Well, why don't we start anyway? Again, I'm your host, Jeff Hyman. If I don't know you personally, it's super to spend some time with you. And before we wrap up, I'll give you my email address and you can follow up with anything that you want. So with all that said, why don't you start typing in the chat box, anything that's on your mind, anything you want to talk about. It's going to be kind of a constant flow. So I may need you to retype it a little bit. So just think of your question and we'll get to as many as you can. I'm going to go rapid fire. So I'm going to go through as many questions as we can over the next period of time. And what I thought we might do is actually alternate. So kind of one job searching, job hunting related question, and then one employer, hiring or cutting back or whatever it might be type of question. So we can kind of go back and forth, make sure we cover both sides of the coin because it's a pretty complex coin right now. So with all that said, just type your questions in the chat box and we'll get started. Okay, I am going to use my glasses for the questions. Okay, first one. How do I improve and maintain trust with my team when I'm doing it virtually? That's something that we are all learning how to do because so much of trust is the ephemeral personal connection. And now that we're all behind this screen, behind these webcams, behind these microphones, it's pretty hard to do that. So to build trust right now, I think there's a few things. First, do everything you can to reach through and penetrate that screen. I think video is the best tool I've ever found to do that. That can be done in a lot of different forums, right? It can be done one-on-one with each member of your team once a week. We could talk about that later if you like. with your whole team. I've seen departments doing it. I've seen companies of hundreds of people doing it. And yes, you get a little Brady Bunch type of squares, but video is just so much better. It's not as good as in person. You can't put your arm around the person's shoulder and say, I know you had a rough day, but it's super important. But it goes beyond video. The key to building trust with anyone, but especially with your team, is demonstrating vulnerability, which is a great challenge for so many leaders. Yet it has to come first, and it means you have to go first. You have to demonstrate vulnerability to your team before you can expect them to do the same and to trust you. So what does vulnerability look like? Vulnerability means entering the danger and talking about things that are difficult. Being able to say, I don't know. I know we're going to get through this, but I'm not sure that I quite know how, but I know that we're going to get there. So you demonstrate hope and optimism, as a great leader does, but also a sense of realism and truth and honesty. And right now, in these uncertain times, I think your team will know that you're full of it if you're not demonstrating vulnerability. Vulnerability also means being okay when your kid walks through the camera shot or your dog barks during the day and your whole team sees. That's okay. Don't freak out. People understand. It is that kind of time that we're in. So it all starts with vulnerability, and that's how you build trust. And I think there's one last thing on how to build trust, and then we'll move on to the next question, which is now's the time to demonstrate that you trust your team. It's the time to demonstrate that you trust that you've made great hiring decisions, that you've recruited a team of rock stars in every seat. And if you find that you haven't, you're going to find out now, and you'll have to address that, obviously. But don't even try to micromanage. You can't do it virtually. I've led a virtual team for 5 years. It can't be done. Set the direction, take the hill, but let your team be resourceful and figure out how to do it. And that will engender immense trust from your team. So those are some ideas on building trust virtually. Let's go to the next question. And give me one moment, because there's quite a few. Okay. Can you provide guidance on how you should prepare your references for an inquiry from a potential employer? How much detail and company background? Great question from David. So, yes, references are immensely important in the recruiting process. As a headhunter, I've spoken with thousands and thousands of references over the years. And, a lot of people think references are useless, but I focus on backdoor references, which are the people that I find on my own. They're not the ones that the candidate provides. So you can't prepare those backdoor references because you don't know who they're going to be. But you certainly can prepare your front door references, the list of people that you give to a prospective employer. I'll give you some tips. First of all, do it early in the process. Do it before you're even asked. It inspires such confidence. When you say, hey, I know you haven't asked for it, but I wanted to give you my list of references. And when I see that list, and the longer the list, the better, I almost know what they're going to say because you had that confidence to provide that list. And that list should be every former manager you've ever had, if it's even remotely possible. And we could talk more about that later if you like. Their mobile number, their email address, their current role in company. So make it super easy for the reference checker, whether it's your hiring manager, your executive recruiter, et cetera. Now, to David's question, how to prepare those people? Yes, you reach out to each of those people first, just as a courtesy, so they're not, caught off guard, but to give them a very short snapshot of the role that you are interviewing for, what it is all about. So what is the scope of that role or the purpose of that role? A bit about the company, unless it's a company like Apple that they know, but they probably don't. So don't assume they know. Give them a little bit of information about the company and anything you want them to be sure to focus on. So if you don't talk about that, they're just going to say, oh, David's a great guy and he was awesome. But if David, you know that the company is concerned about your lack of industry experience, you want that former manager to say, you know what? David didn't know anything about our industry, and in 2 months, he knew it better than I did, right? So make sure you kind of prepare them, arm them with information, include a copy of your resume or your CV or your LinkedIn so they can refresh themselves. Maybe they were your manager 5-10 years ago. So yes, you must prepare your former managers for reference checks. Let's go to the next one. From Jonathan, how do you enter new industries after working in one vertical for the past 10 years? It's a great question. And it can be done. I see it done every day. The best way to do it is to think about other industries that are adjacent, that may not be as impacted. So, of course, hospitality right now is in the dead center of the bullseye of what's been impacted by the situation. But there are all kinds of industries that serve or feed the hospitality industry, and some of those certainly are impacted too, right? So companies that wash sheets for hotels are obviously impacted, but there's plenty of other vendors and companies and customers that are not impacted or not as much. Accounting firms that serve the hospitality industry, consulting firms that serve the hospitality industry. The tax situation over the next year is going to be incredibly complex, and many of those tax preparers specialize in the hospitality industry. So that's just one little example, but the point is to think about adjacent industries. After you tap that out, think about other industries that are comparable, or have comparable dynamics. So, maybe it's a long sales cycle. Well, I'm used to a long sales cycle. Maybe there's very low customer concentration. My industry has that too, and so on and so forth. And you'll find that you can think of other industries that are kind of similar in a lot of ways, and target those industries as well. Now, as you communicate your background, make sure you're obviously drawing those connections. Don't expect the employer to do it for you. You want to make sure you talk about them up front. Let's go to the next question. How to advise mid-career professionals looking for work who have not cultivated a network? Well, obviously you want to dig your well before you're thirsty. But if you haven't done it, it's too late for that. But I will say that most leaders I talk with don't get creative enough on thinking about the network that they actually have established. I've almost never met somebody that when I give them this exercise, they can't list out a few hundred people. So let me tell you the exercise. Start with every company that you have worked for over the recent past, let's call it 10, 15 years. Think of every individual that you can think of that you worked with at that company. Start making a list. Add to that list anyone that worked at the company perhaps at the same time that maybe you didn't know, or you knew their name, or maybe you met in a meeting. They're not a total stranger, but again, you are kind of from the same alumni club. You both worked at Apple at the same time. So you do that for all your employers. Now you do that for your colleges. Well, actually, let's hold on schools. Still in the company bucket, you've got your customers and your vendors. So you probably worked with a lot of outside vendors. If you were in marketing, you worked with ad agencies. If you were in HR, you worked with a payroll firm. If you were in software development, you worked with tech suppliers, hosting companies, whatever it may be, your sales reps from those companies, the consultants you worked with those companies. Then you have all your customers, right? Even if you're not in sales, you still probably interacted with some of the company's customers. You start making this list, and then you use LinkedIn to come up with even more. So you can search by company in geography for certain time periods, and you'll find other people that worked there at the same time. That list should already be hundreds of people. Now, some of those people are going to be more useful than others, obviously, but technically they're all in your network. Second, go through your LinkedIn network. And most people have over 500 people by this point. I've got 30,000, but a lot of people have in the thousands or tens of thousands. And spend time going through that network and refreshing yourself. You'll be shocked on who you connected with 3 years ago and have not talked to them. Now's as good a time as any. So you'll add that list. Now, schools, your classmates, and virtually every school in the US has an alumni database. If you don't have access, send an email to career services or alumni services at your both undergrad and grad if you have them, and go through that database. You're going to find dozens or hundreds more. So just in a couple minutes, we've already gotten a pretty long list, and I think that'll get you started in a pretty meaningful way. Let's go to the next one. How do you make a Rockstar LinkedIn profile? That's a great question. I'm going to pull up a LinkedIn profile. And let's see if we can do that right now on the fly. Bear with me. Wasn't ready for this question. Okay. So we're going to go to LinkedIn. And you know what? Let's use someone on the call. I'm going to get permission from someone. If you're cool with me doing a real-time teardown of your LinkedIn, I charge a lot of money for this normally. Type your name in the chat box and just say, okay, you use my LinkedIn, and I'll pull you. I need your first name and last name because I can't see that. And then we'll use a real LinkedIn profile. In the meantime, I'm going to prepare for that. Okay, we've got one. Let me type this in. David Yagnasak. I'm assuming this is David because there's only one David. Okay. David, thank you for offering. Here we go with David. So I'm going to give you LinkedIn Profile 101. So I certainly see some opportunities for improvement right away, but also I will say this is not terrible. So that's a good start. Okay, let's start just with probably the few most important things to know. Number one, the average LinkedIn profile or resume gets 6 seconds. 6 seconds. After 6 seconds, the individual who may be thinking about discussing an opportunity with you has already made their decision on whether they want to go to the next step or not. So that means a few things. It better grab people fast and break through all the noise. When in doubt, leave it out. If it's not going to make the difference between getting the meeting or not getting the meeting, leave it out. You're trying to get the meeting, not get the job. So that's a huge mistake people make. I think what a lot of people do is use it as kind of a brag book or a tome of their whole career. And that's great for you, the individual, but for anyone that's trying to make a quick decision on whether they want to spend time together, it's not so great. So typically people can either thin them down or they have no information, in which case you need to find that middle ground too. So that's kind of some generic advice. So let's look at David's and kind of see how he does. Okay. First of all, huge opportunity. This graphic up here. So David, your photo is terrific, charming. You look intelligent, awesome. Wouldn't change a thing about the photo, but you absolutely must have a headshot. Now, you're probably not going to find a lot of photographers open right now, so you're going to have your kid snap 50 pictures using your iPhone until you get one that works. Should be about the same distance as David's. That's actually great. No dog in it, no funny, cheesy joke in it, and it's okay to smile to show that you're a human. But the lost opportunity that David's got here is this graphic up top. You can change that. I don't know if you knew that, but when you go to your LinkedIn profile, which you do up here under me, and then you'll go to access, view your profile, you can change this graphic, right, to a photo or a landscape. So again, I wouldn't do necessarily a hobby because I don't want the viewer to think you're just all about your hobby. But it could either be the cityscape of the city that you're in. So immediately I see that you're local, or you're San Francisco or Manhattan or whatever it is, or it could be an image that conveys something about your function or your industry, right? So if you work at Black & Decker like I used to, you could have a great photo that you find online of a house being built. So again, it kind of sets the tone, and a picture's worth 1,000 words. So don't lose that opportunity. This is the default LinkedIn picture. Okay, let's move on. So David's got his subhead. This is probably the next most important phrase. And he's got about the right length. 6 words is perfect, right? The problem is it's pretty generic. So executive operations and general management leader is a catch-all. It means so many things to so many people. I'd love to see that much more targeted, either about a specific industry experience or some business that he has scaled. Again, 6 to 8 words. You don't want to go too long, but that is a lost opportunity. When you do a search, or when a a headhunter like me does a search, what we're going to find is a whole list of people, and just that one line is going to show, and it's a lost opportunity. Okay, let's move on to other things about David's profile. Actually, before I do, type in the chat box if this is making sense and if this is helpful, because if so, I'm going to stay on LinkedIn for a few minutes. If you could type in the chat box yes, or type in the chat box no, I'm going to take a sip of Cabernet, and then we'll keep going. Oh, that's good. Yes, very helpful. Keep going. Yes. Okay, great. I'll slow down and we'll keep going. So the next opportunity here with David, or really with anyone, is the about section. Okay, think of this as a summary. And one thing that David has done great is include his contact info, because if you are not connected to someone, they cannot reach you other than send you an in-mail. And if you don't check your in-mail on LinkedIn often, they can't get in touch with you unless they have some secret email finding tools like I use. But David has included his phone and email, which I'm not going to show you too much there. Okay. But there's a lot of word vomit up here. And I think I know that David has taken someone's advice to include every word under the sun to make sure his profile comes up in a search. And I get that strategy. The problem is no one's ever going to read this. So if it's really important to include some of these keywords, that's great. But a lot of this information, David, could be skinnied down, and specifically quantifiable accomplishments, right? There's 2 or 3 things that we've all done that we are most proud of, right? We launched a new product. We set a new record. We grew revenue by 200%. We did something, 2 or 3 of those things in a lifetime. If you're lucky, those are the things to include in the about section, not word vomit. Okay, let's keep going to the experience section. David is with a consulting firm. Now, it's not a consulting firm I've heard of, so it's great that he includes here that it's an international consultancy for excellence in supply chain. That's great. If it was Apple, probably wouldn't need to say maker of the iPhone, because we already know that. Now, he also includes, again, a little bit of word vomit here. I'm focused on bullet points, much easier for the eye to scan, as opposed to prose, which is the way this is structured, but also quantifiable achievements. You should know your metrics. You should be able to convince the hiring manager, the headhunter, that you know your numbers. And so that's you grew revenue by X, you cut costs by Y, you launched Z new products, et cetera, et cetera. So there's an opportunity for improvement there. Here's a little bit of confusion on David's. He's a consultant at RNG Global Consultants, but he's an owner and consultant at his own consulting firm. It begs the question of what is that all about? And the problem is David's not there to answer the question. So now I have to decide, is he even available? Maybe he's taken a job. Maybe he forgot to update his profile. So make it not confusing. Now, if for some reason David included his consulting firm, he has another opportunity here, which is to get rid of the gray box of death. So when you enter a company name, the icon should appear, such as RNG or JCD, right? You can see the company name, Samusa, but there is no company logo here because it's his own company. But David can create a company in LinkedIn, upload his logo or icon, and it'll get rid of the gray box of death. You want to get rid of all of those gray boxes of death because you have an opportunity to make a great image and a great impression. Going further down, I see that he was with JCD for just 10 months, right? I'm obviously going to want to understand why, but again, just trying to get the meeting. So Samusa, he had a number of roles now. He's really made use of images, which is great. It's another opportunity in your profile to kind of just bring some life to it. I can kind of see what the products were that he was working on if I was interested, but otherwise it's not that annoying. Again, this is really long. Now I know he was there for 9 years, but this is really dense. This feels really, really dense. I'm sure there are some things in here that are not going to make the difference. For example, I'm just picking one at random. created and led safety program. Okay, I'm sure that's very important, but he was VP of operations for 12 years. Is that going to make the difference between me sending David that email or calling him and saying, I'd love to talk to you about a job as COO? It's probably not going to make the difference. When in doubt, leave it out. Just a couple more minutes and then we'll keep going. So here's a big one. Here's a big opportunity for improvement. So if we go back to the top, so on the right side, upper right, is your current employer, which is basically LinkedIn's algorithm takes the first employer on your list. So make sure it really is your main employer. But second, it lists your first educational experience. Now, David has done a great job because he not only got his bachelor's at Notre Dame, awesome. Got his master's at Minnesota, awesome. He also went through GE's management development training program, which is phenomenal. But he has listed it first, which means that LinkedIn automatically puts it first here. And because it's not really a university, I wouldn't recommend that. I would actually move either U of M or Notre Dame to the top of that list. And I usually recommend the school with the most noteworthy reputation or highest brand awareness. So if you went to, UW-Madison, that would be first because everyone knows UW-Madison. So I would demote, if you will, General Electric. Also, that's not going to bring in a icon because it's not a school. So those are some things that I see immediately. Happy to do another one before we finish, but let's move on to the next question. I hope that's useful. I'm going to turn off the screen share and let's keep going. Let's go to the next question. Mark asks, how do headhunters look at company duration? When I've hired, 3 or more 1-year stints raised a red flag. But what about 2 to 3 year durations? That's a great question, Mark. This is going to help. So the concept has changed dramatically. Even in the time that I've been recruiting for 25 years, the average job tenure right now obviously has never been shorter. In many industries, it's under 24 months. So when I see a candidate, I'm not saying that's good or bad, but that just is fact. So when I see an individual who's been at a company for 2 years, I kind of say, okay, well, that's the average duration. Now, would I love to see more? Yes. If they've never had anything longer and they're 20 years of experience, yeah. I will see, I look for a pattern. It's like a stock chart. I'm looking for a trend line more than a particular data point. So if I see 2 years, 2 years, 2 years, for 10 of those in a row, then what it tells me is the person either doesn't add enough value and the company decides to part ways with them, or they get bored or itchy after 2 years, which I got to get nervous about that too. Not the end of the world, but it's something to think about. That's very different than someone who has 3 or 4 or 5, 6 month stints in a row, right? Because that's far below average. The exception being tech startups, right? So I have seen many candidates who are exceptional and they're just not great at picking startups, or they don't do their due diligence on startups, which tells me something else too. But you need to think about that for Silicon Valley or tech startups, because that job tenure is much less on average. On the other end of the spectrum, there's risks when you find candidates who have been with one company their whole career. You really have to worry about whether they're going to be able to adapt and shift to your company's culture. I've met people from Sears who've been there 30 years, and I'm sure they're terrific, but do I want to be that first next job? Do I want to take that risk, or do I want to let them kind of get off the off-ramp, show that they can adapt to another culture, and then move on? So look for a pattern. Don't get hung up on a data point. That's how I look at it. And I think that's how a lot of headhunters look at it. There's another question related. How does a headhunter look at a tenure of 15 to 18 years? Before that was 3.5 years each of 3 companies. Again, I think that's fine. But the hidden objection, the unspoken objection will be, great, you've been at this company for 15 to 18 years, hopefully a successful company. I want to know what your part was in making that company a success and scaling that business, right? So if you were one of the first hires at Amazon and you helped scale the business, I'm not going to have any problem with the fact you were there 15, 18 years. God bless you. But If you were at a dud of a company that never achieved breakthrough or success for 15, 18 years, I'll have a different set of questions. Why did you decide to stay? What did you learn after year number 5? How do I know you didn't grow stale, etc.? So it really depends upon the context. Next question. We are currently experiencing a surge in operations responding to COVID-19, but still treading lightly in how to proceed given industry-wide impacts. How, as a leader, do you balance trusting your team, but also rolling up your sleeves in a can-do attitude to help relieve the workload pressures? Great question from Julia. So I think of this as wartime. It's the first war I've ever lived through or experienced. And if you know anything about wartime leadership, you know a few key principles. One is you do whatever it takes to live to fight another day. That is the sole focus of you and your team and your organization, is overcoming what's right in front of you. And for a lot of companies right now, that means survival and maintaining cash. It sounds like in your case, business is booming, which is great. Unfortunately brought on by the virus situation. But if that means you need to jump in and do stuff you did 5-10 years ago, that's what it takes. That's what you do. Now, if you're the leader of that team, hopefully you're out recruiting or sourcing for help, maybe even part-time consultants or any kind of resources to shore up and supplement your team. But if it takes you diving in to the dirt, to the mud, to advance your team, then that's what you got to do. That will engender so much trust, so much will on the part of your team, which then begs the other point, which is how do you balance trusting your team? Those are not mutually exclusive. You can still trust your team and realize that they just don't have the capacity and you got to dive in, right? But don't micromanage them. Tell them, guys, I'm taking my hand off the wheel much looser than it used to be. We used to check in every 2 days on this or that, the other. Now we're just going to check in once a week or every other week because I'm diving in to handle these customers or this project. Your team will appreciate it. And if you've hired well, which hopefully, Julia, you have, you will find people rise to the occasion. It's pretty remarkable what's happening. This is the time that leaders are made. Let's go to the next question. How do companies see your current designation versus a potential new designation? For example, a manager being considered as a VP in a different organization. If seen negatively, how do you overcome that barrier? Well, I think it varies more by leader and hiring manager than it does by company. So let's be more specific. Let's talk about the actual person that you're talking to or hoping to talk to. If they've read my book, which I'll give to you free if you don't have a copy already, just go to recruitrockstars.com. I didn't have a chance to put fancy subtitles up, but if you go here, I'll give you a free copy of the book. If you've read that, you know that I love up-and-comers, right? If I have a client who's looking for a phenomenal VP of marketing, that person today may very well not be a VP of marketing. They may be a director of marketing, and we're kind of calling them up to the majors, the major league. Happens all the time. So great, they don't have the title, but they're doing the job today. They've got the competencies. They're a perfect match for the DNA of our company. DNA, chapter 2. We'll take the chance on that person. Happens all the time. Now, there are other situations where a hiring manager needs someone who's been doing this job for 10 years, who has that title, who has the gravitas, who's probably at the same compensation level. There are certainly situations like that. Turnarounds are notorious, right? There's no time to get ramped in a turnaround, right? You start Monday and by Tuesday, you're producing. We need you producing. There's no week or 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 3 quarters to ramp up. So in cases like that, they may be less open to hiring someone that's not currently of that level. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Just type them in the chat box. We're getting rolling here. We'll do another LinkedIn profile if you want in a little bit. And we're only a half hour in, so we'll go to the next one. If someone is at a large, stable company right now, would you recommend they halt their job search and stay put for now, given the uncertain situation? Yeah, I think I would. I hate saying that. I hate hearing the words come out of my mouth. But this situation is so unique and so uncertain that if your current situation is tolerable, right? Because life's too short if it's not tolerable. If your manager is beating on you every day, or your commute, well, you don't have a commute right now, but if you're going to go back to some crazy commute, if it's just not doable, then you got to make a change. But if you have a safe port in this storm and you're able to make it through, and you are producing and adding value, I think that staying with a large, boring, well-paid company right now, if that's the situation you're in, is not such a bad place to be. I hope that changes in weeks or months. I really hope it does for you, but that is probably good advice right now. Let's move on. Okay, let's do another LinkedIn profile. Brooke Brooks. Wow, cool name. Okay, so let's go to LinkedIn, and we're going to do another. We'll do another LinkedIn profile teardown. Maybe I'll host a TV show like this. Okay, Brooke Brooks. There's a bunch of Brooke Brooks. Brooke Brooks, can you give me any more information about who you are? Because I don't want to pick the wrong person. I see a bunch of Brooke Brooks. It's a much more common name than I would have thought. But tell me which one you are, and I'm happy to do it. And I'll get lubricated and get ready to go. Yeah, can you tell me like your title, your company, anything? Brooke Brooks. Just type in the chat box. You're keeping hundreds of people waiting, Brooke. For gosh sakes. Okay, corporate counsel. Got it. Brooke Brooks, corporate counsel. Here we go. Okay. So let's start at the top, just like we did last time. Headshot's great, and you've made good use of this graphic with kind of a word cloud, which is terrific. But let me understand kind of a bit more about Brooke. Consulting attorney to a diversity-focused media company. So it would seem like this word cloud is pretty appropriate. So kind of interesting. It's definitely unique and different. Never seen that one before. Corporate counsel says who she is. Veteran says what she is. Community advocate tells us a little bit of her interest and passion. So I don't have any big issue with that. Just make sure that it's super hard hitting and that you've really wordsmithed those 6 words, right? That is the most important 6 words on this entire page. It's that important. So first opportunity, the gray box of death that we talked about before. So Diversity Media LLC is her employer. I don't know if that's Brooke's own company or if it's another company, but regardless, she can set it up as a company, or she can talk to HR, whoever controls the LinkedIn profile, to get a graphic there. That's going to help from an optics standpoint. We can also lose the LLC, not necessary. That kind of screams small company. It's great that she's used bullet points. It's a lot more readable. But I noticed that she structures and negotiates a wide variety of contracts. Well, I know that's what an attorney does, so probably not the most important thing to start with, right? Hands-on experience drafting and negotiating composer and performer agreements. So I guess it's in the music industry, right? So this is okay, but this is job description. This in this description, Brooke is basically telling us what she does. The problem is I kind of know what an attorney does. I want to know the impact that she made. So did she bring in X dollars of business? Did she bring in 31 clients? Did she craft a contract that saved her client $2 billion? Whatever it is, quantifying impact, results, that's what people want to see. the impact that you made, the results you generated, far, far more impressive than kind of a job description, right? Now, if it's a very unusual job, you're going to need a little bit of job description, right? But if it's anything like most roles, probably 80% of roles probably don't need it. Let's keep rolling. Senior litigation associate, looks like she was at a bigger firm, obviously for 8 months. So be prepared to talk about that. Now, here's again the same confusion we had from earlier. She's got 2 current employers. So I would be very clear on what that means, right? 17 to present, 19 to present. Does that mean she hasn't updated her profile? Does that mean she's doing 2 jobs? And if so, how is she possibly going to leave both jobs for the role I want to discuss with her? Really need to clarify that if at all possible. Then U.S. Air Force Reserve, terrific. Another law firm. Gray box of death, we can fill that in. There's a lot of experience here. I would just, because it doesn't look like you have a ton of total experience, I would make sure that you really need all this stuff, right? When in doubt, leave it out. When in doubt, leave it out. And then, of course, you got your law school coming up here, which is terrific. So overall, it could be sharpened, but it's not terrible. It's certainly not terrible. So why don't we end that one for now? Brooke, thanks for letting us use that one. We'll do one more before we finish. Let's go to the next question. Eric asks, what's the best way to position one's operating experience as a benefit to a PE or VC firm? So from that question, I guess the first sub-question is, are we talking about to potentially get a role at a PE or a VC firm or at one of their portfolio companies? Right now, I do not think is going to be a great time to join a PE or a VC firm. The ones I've spoken with over the past 2 weeks are, to say they are frozen and focused on their portfolio companies seems to be the case. So I wouldn't probably focus on joining the firm. However, if you can position your operating experience as something relevant to the portfolio companies they have that are having trouble right now for whatever reason, their sales are tanking, and you're a rainmaking expert in a particular industry, and they have 7 companies in that industry, then yes, there's a discussion to be had. Now, understand that they're probably going to introduce you right to the portfolio company. You're not going to be working for the private equity or VC firm, but that's still an in, right? Because once you've done a great job advising or helping the CEOs of these 7 portfolio companies and you've turned around their sales, who's going to want to talk to you is that private equity or venture capital firm. So if you know how to make rain in a particular sector and you've proven how to do it and you can help them do it, and you target the right PE and VC firms, there's something to be said. On the other hand, if your operating experience involves restructuring and cost cutting and achieving profitability in a very short period of time, and you've had to do that or you've led turnarounds, there's experience there that PEs and VCs might be interested in. But I would probably position it as more of a hired gun than trying to join the firm, at least until the dust settles. Okay, let's go to the next question. Just type in the chat box your questions, guys, and hopefully we'll get to as many as you can. Okay, the next one. How do I know my team is really working? I'm concerned that they're actually not being productive at home. That's a fair question. Again, hopefully you've hired the right team. You're about to find out if you have. And if you have, then you need to trust them. And that may mean that you get burnt on 1 or 2 of your folks, but I think you're going to find many rise to the occasion, partially because people are watching CNN, they're reading the paper, they know that this morning 3.5 million people hit the layoff roster in the US. So people are very nervous right now, and they're not going to let off the gas. God forbid you even think about parting ways with them. So I don't think you're going to find that. I think you're going to find your team's going to rise to the occasion. What I found in leading a virtual team of a 70-person company for 5 years is I actually worried more about overwork than I did about underwork. And what I mean is, because we are all now working from home, as surreal as that is, there's no boundaries. And so we found we had a tough time getting people off email, getting people to close their laptops, getting people just to wind down for the night, to not have their phone by their bedside. You need to actually have these conversations with your team to make sure they understand that, yes, we got a lot to do. And yes, we have an imminent threat we need to fend off. But I need you in one piece. I need your mental health. I need your sanity. I need your physical health. Are you sleeping? Are you eating right? Are you exercising? I know those sound very unusual topics to have with your team. First of all, it's going to demonstrate that you give a shit about them, which is terrific. But more importantly, from a business results standpoint, happens to be true. People can't do great work for you if they're not sleeping, if they're worried about losing their job, if they're on email 24 hours a day just to show you that they're working. So I would worry more about overwork than underwork. Okay, let's go to the next question. Just type in the chat box. I'm going to take a sip and we're going to keep going. Okay, next question. Oh, from a fellow headhunter. I sometimes feel guilty about overhyping the role that I'm recruiting for. I am worried that it causes resentment amongst the client and the candidate. So I get the question. You shouldn't have to overhype the role for two reasons. It should be a good role, right? As an executive recruiter, I can't take on an assignment, and I don't, if it's a crappy role, right? If it's just uninspiring work or make do work or just grunt work, whatever it is, the hiring manager needs to define that role and craft the role so that it's appetizing and appealing, so that the individual that they hire is going to learn something and grow and have a career path and make enough money, but that's not even the number one thing on the list for most top performers. So your job as headhunter, and this applies to any of you as leaders, is to make sure that that role is a great role. That's the only way you have a chance of hiring a rock star. I'm plugging the book, and it's free, so I'll just give you the book. So that's number one. Number two, don't forget there's a lid for every pot. You may find the role to not be that interesting. You may feel you're overhyping it, but to the right candidate, who may be 20% below that role in terms of not just comp, but experience and tenure and learning, they may find that role to be perfectly appealing and interesting. So I wouldn't think about it that way, but you can't sell crap. You can't put lipstick on a pig. If it's a crappy job, you need to work with the team to redefine, rescope the role, not just the title, but the actual role itself. Okay, let's go to the next one. How much should we believe in a headhunter's motivational speech about how good you are in the potential new role? What do you think about a headhunter being involved in the interview panel? I just want to have a headhunter's perspective. So I don't recommend blowing smoke up anyone's ass in terms of the candidate. I don't give a speech on how great they're going to be in the role, but and a headhunter, or you as a line manager, as a CEO, as a department head, sometimes needs to help the candidate draw the connections. You can't just expect an outside candidate to say, oh, this is the perfect role for me. You have to educate them. You have to sell them, not hype, but educate them. So let's move away from that example. Let's think about a salesperson. The best salesperson is consultative, asks questions before they speak, right? They don't just show up and throw up. They ask questions. What are your needs, and how do we address them, and what's your biggest problems, and what have you tried? That's what a great salesperson does. Someone who's trying to recruit a rock star does the same things. Tell me about your career aspirations. What are you most bored with? What was the best job you ever had? What kind of relationship do you want with your manager? And then you'll draw one of two conclusions. This person actually would be great for this job. Then you have to help them see that. You have to help explain the job, educate them on why this is such a perfect match, or realize, you know what, this is not a great match, and move on to the next candidate. So education is always a good thing. Okay, let's go to the next question. I'm totally stuck. What should I look for in my next job? Fair question. We've all felt that way before. So what to look for in the next job? I'll give you a 2-minute lesson on kind of how I think about these things. I recommend taking out a piece of paper and creating a Venn diagram with 3 circles. I'm not going to draw it for you right now, but 3 overlapping circles. You know what a Venn diagram is. And fill in the 3 circles. Wine helps dramatically in filling in the 3 circles. I'm getting more candid already. The first circle is, what are you exceptional at? What would you say you are a rock star at? Let's define rock star. It's in the first chapter of the book. People that are in the top 5% at a particular thing. So don't talk about what you're good at. If you're amazing at 1 or 2 things, that's enough, right? So that's what goes in that circle. It may be building relationships. It may be finding bugs in software, whatever it is. That's circle 1. Circle 2. What are you absolutely passionate about and love doing? Now that can be tasks or things that you love doing at work, or it could be just interests. It could be you love horticultural, you love dogs, whatever it is. That goes to the circle 2. Circle 3 is the toughest one, and it changes over time, which is, what value can I create that people are willing to pay for? Okay. How do I create value for other people that they will actually compensate me? Unless you want to work for free, that's great. But if you're talking about your career or a paying job, that's an important circle too, because what good is it if you're good at something, you're good at making origami, you love making origami, who's going to pay you right now in this uncertain market to do origami? Probably not a lot of people. Okay. So you're writing in that circle. And then what we're looking for is the overlap between those 3 things. And if you can nail that thing, man, you got it, right? Your resume follows from that. Your LinkedIn follows from that. Your target list of companies follows from that. We can go through any of those things and how to do them. But it starts with that Venn diagram. And a lot of people don't take the time to think about that. And it certainly evolves over the career. But I'd encourage you to really think about that. And if you want help, I'll help you. Just go to headhunteredge.com. This webinar is sponsored by headhunteredge.com. And I'll work with you and we'll get your 3 Venn diagram. It's not hard to do, but having a sounding board, having someone really push you on the questions can be really helpful. If it's not me, find someone who knows you best, your wife, your spouse, your partner, your roommate, your clergy, whatever. Okay, let's go on to the next question. Just type in the chat box. We're just getting rolling here, guys. We're going to do another LinkedIn teardown in just a little bit. But in the meantime, let's do another question. How do I interview for a job remotely on video? That's a great question. I don't know from the question if you mean as a candidate or as an employer, but my answer is probably the same either way, but mainly as a candidate. So obviously, well, let's go through the basics, right? What are you going to wear? It looks weird if you're wearing a suit during COVID-19 lockdown from home. I don't think you need to wear a suit. I also wouldn't wear a torn t-shirt. I had one of those with a candidate yesterday. So you could find something in between. Do your best, your very best, to have a quiet space. If that's your bathroom, that's your bathroom. I had an interview a couple of days ago with someone in a closet at their home, a walk-in closet, but it was the only place that they get away from the kids and the dog. So whatever it takes. Check your tech connection before the appointed time. If the interview is at 2:00, don't wait till 1:59 to try the link, right? So get on, make sure you got the bandwidth, get all your family off the internet for that 1 hour. Let them watch TV, preferably something that's already downloaded, not streaming. Stop all your backups, stop all your apps, free up bandwidth. Super important right now. I know it's something you normally wouldn't think about. One of the best parts about a video is they can't see, other than what's here, they can't see. So they don't see what you have right next to it. So you can have a cheat sheet. You can have your resume hanging on the wall. You can have a cheat sheet of your accomplishments, those bullet points that we talked about before, what I call your SARs, situation, action, result, for every job you ever had. What was the situation you stepped into? What was the action you took? What was the result, right? Have all those in front of you. You can have all that right there. Make sure you have water. I wouldn't recommend Cabernet, but even I have water, so I'd have a glass of water. But probably the single most important thing is eye contact. Don't look at the screen. You got to look at the camera. It's very strange. If you've never been on TV, you have to look at this little dot, the camera, and you're not looking at the screen, right? Big issue. You see the difference. So don't do that. Look at the camera, just like you're looking at a unicorn, a one-eyed person. That's kind of what I pretend. And you have to demonstrate energy and emotion, right? Because you have to come through that camera with energy and emotion. And the only way that I know how to do that is eye contact, is hand motions, nothing distracting, right? But hand motions and energy. Don't be so far away like this, like a hostage video, right? Where they hold the sign. None of that. Also, don't be too close, right? So think about those things. But most important is preparation. If you have thought about and prepared and researched and understand that company's issues, what they're going through during this time of uncertainty, the role, what you've done matches up to that role. Don't wait for the interviewer to ask you the right questions so that he or she gets the right information. Give it to them. Say, I studied the job description. There's 4 things. I'd love to walk you through the 4 things I've done that map to each of those. Would that be okay? The interviewer is going to say, sure, let's do it. And you take them through those 4 things. You basically are selling, but so few candidates do that. You don't have to be passive in an interview. It does not have to be an uncomfortable grilling experience. Okay, type in the chat box your next question. I'm having fun. Hopefully you are too. Looks like we're going to be doing layoffs. How should I think about planning them? I've never done it before. Well, that's a whole evening discussion. That would need a whole bottle of wine. But I have done, unfortunately, layoffs before. I've led those before. It's obviously the last resort. And I could give a whole lesson about it, but I'll give you a couple things to think about. First, of course, is making sure it really is the last resort. So reducing all non-essential expenses in every way, shape, or form. Deferring rent, which a lot of property owners are okay right now if you need to push your rent back a little bit. You don't want them to forgive it. You just want them to let you pay them a bit later. Same with your customers, trying to get them to pay earlier if you can. So managing your cash. Presuming you've done that and perhaps taken a pay cut yourself if you are the leader of the business or the owner of the business, now the choice you have to make is deciding whether you're going to part ways with people, potentially hiring them back in a month or 2 or 3 or 6, however long this period takes, or try to keep the band together and take a proportionate reduction across the board. And I'm seeing companies do it both ways. Neither is right or wrong. They both have pain. It's kind of like which sucks less, right? Do we want to reduce everyone's comp to try to keep the band together, or do we want to keep just a few people intact and part ways with the rest? You have to decide that. And part of the decision for that depends upon your level of risk and your assumption of how long this period of uncertainty and downturn is going to take. Now, I spend most every night the past 3 weeks reading about economist projections of when the job market will come back. It's very torn. Some believe we're going to have a V-shaped recovery. So 2, 3, 4 weeks from now, the lights are going to go back on, the party's going to begin, and we're all going to start hiring like crazy. I don't know if I buy that. Other people believe it's going to be a 2 or 3 year period. The right answer is probably somewhere in between, but you know your numbers. And working with your CFO and your accounting team and controller, you can model it out and see how long you need to make that cash last. I'm telling people, my clients, to assume a reduction of 40% revenue for the next 12 months. Now, I think that's worst case scenario. Could be worse, but hard for me to think it will be. But that's a material decrease. Now, that's obviously not if you're in an industry that's impacted. As we've talked about, there's some industries that are doing great right now, healthcare being one of them. But you need to make that decision. Once you've made that decision, my biggest advice would be cut deep and cut once, because death by 1,000 cuts and layoffs is a surefire way to destroy the morale of an organization. People start looking over their back. Every time you have a Zoom call, people are worried that you're about to lay them off. And if you can avoid that in any way, do it once, cut deep, cut once, focus on the survivors, do everything you can to ensure a soft landing for the people you're parting ways with. But doing that, layer by layer by layer by layer seems like the kind way to do it. But by that third, fourth layer, people are just shell-shocked. And now they can't even focus on their work, which impacts the business results, which kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay. So with all that said, not a great topic, but something to be thinking about. Let's go to the next question. Just type in the chat box and let's go to the next question. And then we will do another LinkedIn teardown. I'm almost ready for a refill. Type in the chat box any question, anything that's on your mind. I want to hear it. Okay. I personally feel disconnected, not seeing my team every day. What do you recommend to keep the team feeling connected, comfortable with each other, and supported and having fun? We're all going through that right now. It's a great question. We did this at Retrofit, which is the virtual company that I led for a few years, and it worked great. And it was a 15-minute stand-up meeting every morning at a certain time, 9 o'clock, call it. If you're national, you got to think about the time zones. And in that 15 minutes, it's just a quick, very quick around the horn. You'd have like 15 seconds, and it would be one fun question, what's the best thing about working at home? Or what's one thing you learned about your spouse this week that you didn't know before, whatever, right? And then a key priority for that day, or a key thing we got to get done that day. And you just kind of go around the horn. Part of it is a built-in accountability and discipline, right? We're all up, we're all out of bed, we're all out of our pajamas, we're focused and working at 9 o'clock, which is great, because believe it or not, some people can't work without that kind of discipline. Part of it is just feeling connected, using video. Part of that is connection. It's just empathy and connection. We would share tears on those kind of calls. We'd talk about a client success that we had. Again, this was an online wellness company, so we changed lives. So that is a great way to stay connected. Obviously, supplementing that with a one-on-one with every one of your direct staff each week right now should be non-negotiable. 20, 25 minutes in video. That could be FaceTime, or that could be Zoom, or a platform like this one. With every one of your team, you've got to be in front of your team. Now is not the time to not be visible. Over communicate. And then I'll add one other thing, which is something I've heard a lot of people doing lately, which is an evening video call with your family. So your extended family, your kids, if they live out of town, your parents, your grandparents. Every night, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, get on Zoom. Just talk about the world and what's going on right now. Because it may not feel appropriate to do that all day long with people at work. And you also worry about your family. Video is a great way to do that too. Okay, let's go to the next question. How are hiring interviews changing? What does it mean when you've done a second round of interviews and you still are not any closer to knowing which of the remaining candidates are the best? I'm a little unclear on whether you're approaching that from the hiring side or candidate side, Andres. So just type in the chat box and let me know, and I'll try to address that one. And everyone else, type in the chat box. Is this useful so far? We've been at it for an hour. Are you up for a few more minutes? Does anyone want a LinkedIn teardown? If so, just type your name. Give me the okay. Give me your first and last name, and we'll do a LinkedIn teardown before you finish. Okay, so the question was on the hiring side. So hiring interviews. What does it mean when you've done a second round and you still don't know who to pick? Great question. So if you go to Recruit Rockstars, you get a copy of my book for free. And the book takes you through a process. Now, you don't have to use my process, but have a process. And the way I think about a hiring process is just like a dating process or a sales process, which is a funnel. And you start with a little bit of time, then you spend more time, then you spend even more time, and you really get to know the finalist or final two before you make your selection. And you're investing more and more time. Now, the thing to remember is that interviews, job interviews, especially over video, are notoriously not great predictors of success. We all rely on job interviews. We interview a bunch of candidates, and whoever has the best interview gets the job. And half the time, we are wrong. That is the national average of hiring accuracy is 50%. And I'm convinced it's because we rely on interviews, which are filled with bias, not just the obvious kind of biases, but also confirmation bias, which basically means in the first 30 seconds, 60 seconds, we make our decision about the candidate based on how they look and how they act and their handshake and all these things. And then we spend the rest of the 59 minutes trying to prove that we were right. That's called confirmation bias. I'm trying to confirm my hypothesis was right. So interviews are notoriously bad and not predictive. So I obviously interview candidates, but I've done 30,000. So, I'm decent at it, but I still don't trust my gut. I still don't trust the interviews. So we move to the two next stages, which most companies don't do or don't do correctly. The first is the test drive, and the second is reference checks. Reference checks we talked about a bit earlier. You can't skip them. I've learned things in reference checks that made me run from a candidate. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen often, but you're going to save yourself a world of hurt if you pay attention to those references. But the test drive, chapter 6, is the single best predictor. It's a single best predictor. And we can talk about test drive later if you guys want, but basically it's a work simulation where I'm seeing the candidate do the work, not just having them tell me about doing the work. And it works beautifully. I've designed them for CEO roles all the way down to admin roles. Haven't found a job yet where I couldn't design a test drive. So I would encourage you to get away from interviews to make that final decision about those 2, 3, 4 finalists. Give them work to do, even if you have to pay them. And that winner will materialize. And it may not be the person who had the best interview. Okay, we're going to do a LinkedIn teardown. Andrea gave me permission, so I am going to share my screen. We'll do one last one. I think you'll find it useful. Here we go. Okay. Andrea Bjorkman. I'm sure I'm butchering that name. Go. Andrea Bjorkman. Okay, let's do it. Most important words right here: strategic HR executive, culture building, talent management, talent acquisition, communication. It's not bad. It's a bit of word vomit. And the reason I say that is a strategic HR executive, I know, and the CEOs that she's probably targeting include culture building, talent management, talent acquisition. So these are sub points to strategic HR executive. So I'd rather see Andrea use this space to flesh out that concept of strategic HR executive, because that's, again, a pretty generic phrase. Is she a strategic HR executive with expertise in the insurance industry? Maybe. Is she a strategic HR executive for lighthouses, which is what I take away up here? I don't know what, but I just think there's a lost opportunity. Okay. Headshot's fine. A lot of energy, great smile. So this picture is a lost opportunity. I don't know what it's trying to say other than she likes the ocean. And if I'm her employer, I don't see where that helps me unless I run a lighthouse company. So lost opportunity. Focus on something else, either your city, which is Chicago skyline, or something about the industry or company. Okay. About section. Again, a lot of word vomit. Not only won't someone read it, but there's some really great stuff here that's just lost. So, for example, she scaled associate growth from 300 people to 2,100 people. She grew a company by 7 times. So if I'm a CEO leader or a headhunter doing a search for that person, and I'm looking for someone who has managed hyper growth of an employee base and all the ensuing complexities that come with that, it's buried. It's like one little tiny bullet point amongst all these other things. And then, we keep going down and there's a lot of specialties, but specialty means you are a rock star. You specialize. You know more than 95% of people, or you're better than 95% of people. And it's very hard for someone to believe that these 15 things are all specialties. An HR leader is not expected to be as a specialist in P&L or talent management. I kind of assume that she is. So again, there's just lost opportunity. Let's keep going because I've already spent 3 minutes and we know that it gets a 6-second look. So she's at State Farm, which is great. I don't need her to tell me what State Farm is because I already know. Although it's great, she tells me that she works at State Farm Bank, which is different than the insurance division. And the first thing I notice is that she was there for 9 years and 1 month, ending May 2018. So now I do the numbers in my head quickly, and I realize that we've got a almost 2-year gap. It's just about a 2-year gap. In a couple of weeks, it's going to be a 2-year gap. And I don't know what Andrea has been doing. So I'm left to guess, and I don't like guessing. So when in doubt, I'm just going to move on to the next one. If I'm a busy, shallow-minded person searching for the right candidate. So either Andrea has been working and it's not here, so she needs to update her profile. Maybe she's been doing consulting. That should be there. Maybe she has been caring for a sick parent. That's totally fine, but that should be there. So I'm just left to guess. Or she's just abandoned her LinkedIn profile. So that needs to be addressed. That's probably the single biggest thing to address. Now, maybe she hasn't done this, I'm guessing, because she wants State Farm to appear to be first, and it appears up here, and all that is great. The problem is I'm just disappointed, right? It's like a big buildup in a plot of a movie, and then I see the movie, and I'm like, oh, man, the buildup was so good, and I can't help but being disappointed. So you can't hide it. So now play from that strength, right? If the strength is, and I'm just making this up, that she scaled this associate team from 300 people to 2,100 people at State Farm, but she adds that section, which means State Farm won't be here, then this is the perfect place to do it, right? So scaled, grew State Farm Bank by 7 times, 7x in 7 years or something like that. I'm just making that up, right? So strategic HR executive who led State Farm Bank through a 7x growth. Now I'm like, whoa, that's pretty good. So we need to add that current experience. The rest of this looks okay. It's not too dense, but again, quantify as much as possible. Maximize team knowledgeability, which is not a word, service and performance quality by 35%. I'd love to see those numbers, those metrics earlier wherever possible. And then I'm assuming that's the only experience that she has. I'm assuming that she only has 12 years experience. Andre, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but there's nothing else here. Education looks fine. Again, the first school is the one that comes up here, and U of I is terrific, has a great reputation in Chicago. So I think that's awesome. So those are my biggest pieces of feedback on that. Okay. We have time for just a couple more questions. So just type them in the chat box, anything you want to know. In the meantime, I'll remind you again, if you want a free copy of the book, go to recruitrockstars.com. If you want to work with me, I'll spend time with you on video and we will crack down anything you want, headhunteredge.com. And of course, I'll give you a free copy of the book. Happy to. Next question. Do you still mine your own network for candidates? Yes. Yes. If you are a candidate looking for a job, you should start with your own network. And if you're looking to hire people, you should start with your own network. When you start with your own network, it's like a secret shortcut, right? Because I know them, I trust them, I know their reputation, I know the quality of work they do. And even if it's not a perfect match for the job, it's devil you know versus devil you don't. Would I rather have someone who I hired before and was amazing, but this is a bit of a stretch for them? Or would I rather hire some stranger off the street who could be psychotic for all I know, right? I'd rather have the safe bet, the devil I know. So yes, start with your network. Once you tap out your network, use your network to find their Rockstar referrals. And the book talks about that. Chapter 5 talks about how to find those people. Another question. I have a lot of experience, but I'm trying not to show my age in my profile. What should I do? Fair question. I've seen this one from every which way over the years, and I think I've concluded that you might as well list it all. I say that for a few reasons. Let's say you're older, right? So you have more than, 30 years experience. First of all, they're going to find that out as soon as they meet you, including on video. So again, it's a bit of misrepresentation. It's a bit kind of cagey. It's not like you're going to get away with it. Number 2, there's a lot of hiring managers who don't discriminate by age or years of experience. And that's the only kind of person you want to work for. So we might as well have that acid test right up front, because I'm assuming you don't want to work for someone who discriminates on age or race or gender or anything else. You might as well find that out. Now, in a resume or a LinkedIn profile, let's use LinkedIn profile, don't include all the bullets in detail from a job 30 years ago. No one cares. It's irrelevant. But including the fact that you worked there, first of all, it could be a huge win, because the person may be very impressed by that company, or they may maybe they've hired people from that company before and it's gone very well. So you're actually maybe doing yourself a disservice. So I say list it, include it, and find out if the person is an age discriminator. And if they are, it's their loss. What's the best feature of the Recruiter LinkedIn software, in your opinion? Well, I'll go to, I'm not going to turn this into a plug for LinkedIn, but some people don't know that LinkedIn has different levels of service. I'm getting very low. And you can search, most people can search for the basics here. So you click people, and now I can search for, people I know who, work at Apple, and their first degree connections, and they are in the United States. I'm sorry, they're at Apple currently, not in the past. And they are in the United States. So I've got 31 of those folks that I'm connected to that work at Apple, because I used to live on the West Coast. But if I want to go even deeper than that, I can go to what is called LinkedIn Recruiter, which is over here, which is an additional paid service. And I'll give you a sneak peek on what that looks like, so you know what most headhunters and HR departments are using to find you. And you go under advanced search, and under advanced search, type in the chat box if this is helpful. I don't want to bore you guys to death. I'll give you just a quick tour. So type yes if you want to see this, or no if you don't want to see this, please. And while we're here in LinkedIn Recruiter, you can see there's many, many, many more fields, right? Like a ton. Most of you are typing yes, you want to see this. So here I can easily search. I'm just making this up on the fly. But if I want to find people in Chicago, and I can, by the way, look just in the city of Chicago or the greater Chicago area, which includes all the suburbs, I can look in the greater Chicago area. I'm at 4.2 million people. Now I want to find people who work at, at Grubhub. And I can look for people from Grubhub current, meaning they currently work there or they worked there in the past. I can actually look for people that worked in the past but aren't there currently, or I can look for current. So I'm going to look for people that work there currently at Grubhub. And there's 1,200 people, which probably matches about their company size. Now I want to find someone who's got a certain number of years of experience. So I want someone with at least 10 to 15 years experience. And I'm down to a manageable number of 300. So I can keep going. And there's other categories like military veterans and things like that. And then I hit search. And here we go, right? So here's the 299 people, and I can pull them up and I can review their profile. So it's very, very similar to regular LinkedIn, other than there's a lot more searching functionality. Do I think it's worth it? Probably not. But I'm working at executive levels, so the fees are high enough that it covers the cost, and it saves me a lot of time. For the average individual, it's a pretty expensive value proposition. Any final questions before we wrap up for this evening? I'm going to let you get on to your beverage and your evening with your family. I hope you'll be able to focus on your family like never before. Set your work aside, set the phone aside, and use this as great bonding time. Your kids are going to appreciate it. Your spouse or partner is going to appreciate it. And I'll remind you of two things. This time has been sponsored by recruitrockstars.com. If you need to hire anybody, let me know. We've got a great new service called Shortlist. It's $1,000, and I introduce you to 10 qualified candidates in 10 days for $1,000. It's super cool. People love it. A lot less expensive than most headhunters. But if you want to talk to a headhunter, that's me. Go to headhunteredge.com and you can book an hour with me, and we'll talk about anything you want, your job search strategy, how to make it possible, how to lay out that Venn diagram that we talked about. We can do a LinkedIn teardown for an hour if you want, and we'll wordsmith it and we'll nail it together. So however you want to spend that time, it's totally up to you. Headhunter Edge. Nice to see you all. Thank you for making the time, and I wish you a very pleasant evening.